Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another episode of Island Vibes, a podcast where we look at things Caribbean. The islands, the people, their culture, their politics, and their way of life. Today we will be touching on two issues in Dominica. Two issues that has been in the media for quite some time now, and in most recent weeks has been raising much concerns and causing much consternation among the people. We will ask some pertinent questions that hopefully somebody can answer for us. Questions that needs to be asked. History this year has a way of repeating itself. And history reminds us, when we recollect of things once said and things once done, that sometimes some of these things come back to bite us in the most unusual ways and in the most unusual places. Today, we will revisit a time under the former administration, the UWP, over 25 years ago, who had a proposal for copper mining in the Deux Branche area. A proposal, to explore for copper, and based on the findings, I would imagine, eventually mining for copper. That proposal was met with stiff opposition from environmentalists back then, in the likes of Mr. Afatan Mate and people like Bernard Wilshire, and the two opposition parties back then, the DLP, the Dominica Labour Party, and the DFP, the Dominica Freedom Party. That proposal eventually was shelved by the UWP. The UWP also had plans to build an international airport. That too was met with stiff opposition. And it involved, the opposition came from some of the same environmentalists and from the opposition parties as well. I remember it being said that there was a party of individuals who made a trip to the site. The site at the time chosen by the UWP was in the Woodford area. And there was this saying that, a party of individuals went there, to include environmentalists and politicians. And one individual stuck his finger in the dirt. And by that, he determined that the site was unsuitable for the construction of an airport. Today, under the DLP, more than 25 years later, or just over 25 years later, we have an international airport under construction. An international airport for which there has been no publication of an environmental impact assessment, the EIA. Neither has there been a publication of a cost-benefit analysis. Some months ago, one former physical planner, Mrs. Annie Edwards, raised some concern about that site. That site chosen by the DLP, which was an alternative site to the former UWP. The former UWP chose a site in Woodford Hill. That site was abandoned by the DLP, the incumbent, and they chose a completely new site in Wesley. And Mrs. Edwards raised some concerns about that new site, particularly because on that site there were a number of streams and small rivers, waterways, and water sources that stood to be affected, because part of the operation and the construction of the airport involved a lot of backfilling in that area to get a level surface to be able to build the terminal and the runway. And her concerns had to do with, the possible blockage and whatever way the water sources and the small rivers and ravines could have been affected, and how the same could also pose a catastrophic danger to the airport, years down the road. For all her expert advice, she was ridiculed, and it had to take her, taking the legal way, the legal route, filing a motion in the court, to get some clarification and to get the necessary information from the government, to include the EIA and whatever other relevant information that they should have made, public. And that matter is yet to be heard, and the outcome of which we will not know until that matter is heard. And so we wait. There was also a case filed by Mr. Edison James for quarrying operations in an area close to the airport under construction, and his concerns had to do with the health risks that the quarrying operations pose to the residents in the nearby area and the effect on the environment as well. And that matter, that legal matter that he brought, he eventually got, the administration through the court to stop operations in that area. And so they decided to choose an alternative site. And guess what? The alternative site turned out to be the very same area that over 25 years ago was abandoned for copper mining, the same Deux Branche area. And based on the activities that's ongoing there, many are of the view that what's happening there, the operations being done, the quarrying operations being done by the Chinese, has nothing to do with the airport. In fact, people are believing that it's copper mining taking place there. And people are raising concerns over it. I'm no expert. I have no idea. I have no evidence that it is copper mining. But what is clear to everybody is what's actually happening in terms of the environment in that area, the impact of such operations on the environment, and the destruction to the natural environment, the land, the protection that the land and the foliage, the forest in that area, the protection that it lent to the area, to the rivers, to the water sources, the destruction of the water sources, the destruction of the ecosystem, the destruction of aquatic life in the areas, and essentially the destruction of the livelihoods or affecting the livelihoods of the people in the Kalinago territory and the Concord areas, the two closest areas to that area being mined, which is actually in Concord. And recently, just about 5 days ago, on a site visit to the area, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, in speaking to the press, assured people that the operations were going to be halted, in the meantime, and he was going to take into consideration the concerns of the people, based on what's happening there. But just yesterday, a few days later, 5 days later, yesterday, December 7th, we saw the circulation of pictures of a muddied and dirty brown Concord River. And people are, are justifiably so, people are expressing much concern over what's going on there, because apparently, according to the Prime Minister, the operations were to be halted, but apparently that wasn't the case, because we saw, the pictures of a dirty river yesterday. And so it leads me to ask a few questions, in all of this. Where is the physical planning department in all of this? Where are the environmentalists? Outside of Gary Ogis, a young man from the very Kalinago territory who has done studies, on the environment, who is an environmentalist in himself. Outside of him, we're not hearing much of anybody else. Mr. Mate is of age now, and he has fought. He has fought a good and long fight. I'm not sure how much energy he has left to fight. But outside of Gary Ogis, this young Kalinago individual who has been speaking about it, we're not hearing much. We're not hearing much from the planning department. Where is the EIA, the environmental impact assessment for that particular operation and for the airport? Why is the Skerrit-led administration allowed to carry out these activities, these operations, when 25 years ago, just a mere proposal met with stiff opposition from some of the very same people who are part of the Skerrit-led administration? Why now they are very silent? Who is holding them accountable? Who is holding the government accountable? Who cares about the villagers, the people in the Kalinago territory and the people in the Concord area, and the people west there as well, because there are still some environmental concerns with the airport under construction in Wesley. They say people get a government they deserve, but is that truly what the people deserve? Is that the kind of governance that the people deserve? Governance where their lives apparently don't seem to matter, their livelihood don't seem to matter, their environment doesn't seem to matter, because politicians, despite people raising concerns, still go ahead with their plans anyway, with their quarrying operations and the airport under construction. And the sad part about it is these two areas, these three areas, in fact, the Kalinago territory and Concord, where this mining operation is taking place, and the area in Wesley, all the three of those constituencies are constituencies held by the Dominica Labour Party, the incumbent. And it's sad, to see that the people who cried foul back then, over 25 years ago, are the very same people who are now fouling the environment, who are fouling the ecosystem, fouling the rivers, and affecting the lives and the livelihoods of the people by operations, especially that what we see happening in the Concord area that affects the Kalinago people and the people of Concord. So these are questions, pertinent questions that I hope that we can find answers to. And I hope that we find resolutions to these issues, because they are impacting the lives of the people. And the people that have been elected by these very people to serve them need to take stock and need to take note of the people's concerns. So until next time, have a pleasant day all.